The longest story ever told is not written in any book. It is written in your bones, in the shape of your hands, in the way you reach for the people you love. Somewhere in a cave on the southern coast of Africa, 100,000 years ago, a pair of hands is grinding redstone into powder. Firelight moves on the walls. The hands are careful. They have done this before. They mix the red dust in a shell the size of your palm. What they are making is not food and not a weapon. It is paint. Here is the part that should stop you for a moment. People exactly like us have existed for as long as 300,000 years. Farming, the thing we call the start of civilization, is only 12,000 years old. That leaves 150,000 years. If everything you ever learned in a history class is one page, this story is a book of 30 pages. And the book was never written down. So, an honest word before we begin. What survives from that time is stone and bone and not much else. The songs are gone. The names are gone. I will build this night from evidence, from genetics, and from careful guesses. And I will tell you, every time, which one you are hearing. The honest version of this story is the more interesting one. Tonight, we will walk through the first things our kind ever left behind. The first paint. The first objects carried across impossible distances. The first music. The first medicine. And the first grave. Before we set off, tell me in the comments where in the world you are drifting off from. I read everyone. And if you fall asleep before the end, that is exactly the idea. The story will wait for you. Let us begin with an ordinary day. 100,000 years ago. Let us call it a Tuesday. The name means nothing yet. No one will invent weeks for another 90,000 years or more. But it helps to think of it that way. Not a famous day, not a battle, not a flood, not a first of anything. Just a Tuesday, 100,000 years ago. It is the hour before dawn on the southern coast of Africa. The sky over the ocean is still dark, but it is thinking about turning grey. Waves come in slow and heavy at the bottom of the cliffs. In a wide cave above the water, about 24 people are asleep. The cave smells of wood smoke, dry grass, and the sea. Near the back wall, a fire has burned down to embers. It glows faint orange when the breeze finds it. Around it, the sleepers lie close together, families folded into families, sharing warmth the way people always have. Listen for a moment. There are no engines anywhere on Earth. There are no roads, no walls, no fields, no bells. There is the ocean, the wind, someone breathing slow beside you, and a bird waking up somewhere down the shore. That is the whole soundscape of the world. An old woman wakes first. We do not know her name. She had one, and the people around her spoke it with love or with fear, and it is gone forever. That is true of every person you will meet tonight. So I will say it once, here, and then let it rest. They all had names. The names did not survive. The people, in every way that matters, did. The old woman sits up out of the grass bedding and finds the fire by its warmth. She feeds it the way you feed something you respect. First, the smallest twigs, laid gently on the embers. Then a slow breath, low and steady. A flame stands up. The cave walls lean in with light. Now, here is the first honest pause of the night. How do we know there was a fire at all? Because ash keeps. When a fire burns in the same spot for years, it leaves layers, one on top of another, like pages pressed flat. Diggers found those layers in caves along this coast. and they read them the way you would read tree rings. The fire was the center of everything. It cooked the food and warmed the sleepers. It kept the big cats honest, out there in the dark. And as we will see by the end of this Tuesday, it did one or two things far stranger than that. The camp wakes slowly, the way camps do. A baby complains and is fed. 2 children are sent, grumbling, to fetch water from a seep at the base of the cliff. Someone checks the tide line of light out on the horizon, doing the oldest math in the world. The sea is going out this morning. That decides the whole day, and everyone knows it without a word. By full light, most of the band is down on the rocks. The tide has pulled the ocean back like a blanket and left the low shelves bare and shining. This is the pantry. Mussels sit in black beds, packed shoulder to shoulder. Limpets hold the stone like little hats. Sea snails wander the pools, in no hurry, which is a mistake. People move along the shelves, bent at the waist, working fast without rushing. Hands pry, twist, drop shells into bags of hide. A girl shows a smaller boy how to take a limpet in one quick move before it clamps down. He tries. He fails. She laughs at him, and the sound skips across the water. 100,000 years ago. This is not a guess. This is one of the surest things we know about these people. Along this coast, they left heaps of shells that built up for thousands of years, layer upon layer upon layer. The oldest of those heaps are far older than our Tuesday. People here had been reading the tides and eating well by them for over 60,000 years already. Stop on that for a second. Gently. To harvest a low tide, you have to know it is coming. You have to track the moon, or the rhythm the moon makes in the water. These people carried the ocean's timetable in their heads, the way you carry the days of your own week. Nobody wrote it down. Somebody taught it to somebody for 3,000 generations. The morning passes like that, unhurried, practical, full of small talk we will never hear. By the time the sea starts creeping back, the bags are heavy. Nobody has worked more than a few hours. This is worth knowing about the deep past. When the land and sea are generous, the day's shopping is short, and while the adults work the rocks, watch the children, because they will tell you something true about all of us. The smallest ones stay close to the mothers, of course, carried or toddling underfoot, but the older children are off in their own small band, and they are doing what children have always done, everywhere, in every age. They are playing. We cannot dig up their games, because a game leaves nothing in the ground, but we can be as certain of them as we are of anything. Children play in every human society ever found, without a single exception, and they have surely always played. So picture it, a knot of children chasing each other along the sand, shrieking, a small girl lining up pebbles in a careful row, sorting them by some rule only she knows. 2 boys throwing sticks at a mark on a rock, again and again, missing and slowly getting better. A little one, copying its mother exactly, prying at a limpet with a serious face, learning by pretending, because that is the secret hidden inside all that play. It is not idle. It is how the young of our kind learn everything. The chasing builds the legs and the wind that will one day run down an animal. The throwing builds the arm and the eye that will one day feed a family. The sorting of pebbles is a mind learning to see patterns and numbers. The pretending is a child rehearsing the whole of adult life, in miniature, in safety, before it counts. No one sat these children in a row and taught them. They taught themselves, the way children still do, through games that feel like nothing but fun, and are secretly the most important work a young human ever does. 100,000 years ago, on that beach, childhood already looked like childhood. And if you could stand there and watch, you would know exactly what you were seeing. And it would make you smile. Back at the cave, the hall is spread out, and the fire gets busy. Shells go on the coals. They hiss and steam and pop open one by one, each with its little breath of salt smoke. The smell fills the cave. It is honestly a good smell. If you were set down in that cave at midday, hungry, you would be fine within the hour. And while the food cooks, the camp settles into the long, soft middle of the day. This is where we meet the hands. A man sits in the good light at the cave mouth with a stone in his lap. It is a pale, fine-grained stone, chosen with care from a place a day's walk from here. He turns it, reading it. Then he lifts a rounded hammerstone and strikes. One clean tap. A flake falls away, thin as a fingernail and sharper than anything in your kitchen. He's not making this up as he goes. Every strike lands where he meant it to land. This skill takes years to learn. And someone taught him. The same way someone taught the girl about limpets. Beside him sits a boy, maybe 8 years old, holding his own lump of stone, copying. His flakes come off short and wrong. Nobody scolds him. Wrong flakes are the tuition. Some scholars believe these coastal bands knew an even finer trick. They may have buried certain stones under the fire and cooked them, slowly, for hours. Done right, the stone changes inside. It flakes cleaner and takes a sharper edge, almost like glass. If that is true, then these people were running a kitchen for rocks, with recipes and temperatures and timing. The evidence is argued about, so hold it loosely. But even the argument tells you how clever these hands were. Here is the thing to carry away from the cave mouth. Nothing about this man's mind was simpler than yours. Take his brain and swap it at birth with a child born this year, and both lives go on without a hitch. The Stone Age boy grows up to fix aircraft engines. The modern boy grows up striking beautiful flakes by a cave mouth. Many scholars have said some version of this, and the evidence keeps agreeing with them. Let your eyes drift to the back of the cave for a moment, while the flakes click and the shells steam. There, on a flat stone against the wall, sits a shell the size of your palm. Inside, it is a crust of dried red paste. A grinding stone rests beside it, stained the same deep rust color. Nobody touches it right now. It just sits there, in the shadows, the way a workbench sits in a garage. Remember it. We found a kit exactly like it, in a cave on this same coast, sealed in the dust. Before this night is over, that little shell of red is going to matter more than anything else in the cave. But not yet. It is still Tuesday, and there are still errands. In the afternoon, a small party goes up the cliff path and inland, into the low green hills. They carry digging sticks, fire-hardened at the tips, and they walk like people who know exactly where they're going. Because they do. They have a map of this whole stretch of country in their heads. Every seep, every grove, every patch of ground that gives food, and in which season. They stop at a patch of ordinary-looking ground, and the digging sticks go to work. What comes up looks like nothing much. Knobby roots and fat underground bulbs, dusted in earth. But this is the quiet secret of this coast. The ground here is full of plants that store their goodness underground, like buried bread. Roast those bulbs in ashes, and you have real food. Filling, steady, dependable food that does not run away and does not bite. Many scholars believe this buried pantry is a big part of why this stretch of coast was such a good place to be human, even when the wider world turned cold and hard. The sea gave protein, the ground gave bread, the fire turned both into dinner. On the way back, the party reads the country without thinking about it. Fresh tracks pressed in a game trail. Worth mentioning tonight. A bee's nest in a dead tree. Worth remembering for later. A storm building far out at sea. Worth watching. Nothing is written. Everything is noticed. Before they turn for home, stand on the ridge with them a moment and look inland. Hills. And behind them, more hills, going back and back into haze. Somewhere out there are other people, but not many, and not close. The truth is, the world of our Tuesday is nearly empty of us. No one can give you the exact number of people alive that evening, and anyone who claims to is guessing. But every honest guess is small. Fewer people on the whole of the earth, many scholars think, than live in a single city today. You could walk this coast for a week and never see a stranger's fire. A band like ours might go a whole season without meeting another. So when bands did meet, it mattered. There were greetings, and there was caution, and there were gifts. A fine stone blade passed hand to hand, a string of shell beads. Many scholars believe those gifts were a kind of promise. If hunger ever comes to your valley, you will be welcome in mine. It was insurance, sealed with presents instead of paper. Hold on to that thought, because later tonight, it will explain something that looks impossible. We keep digging up things hundreds of miles from the only places on Earth they could have come from. That mystery is waiting for us in a later hour. For now, the bags are full, and home is a curl of smoke on the cliffs ahead. By the time they come down the cliff path, the sea has gone quiet the way it sometimes does at the end of the day. Smoke is already rising at the cave mouth. Someone kept the fire fed all afternoon. Someone always does. We are halfway through our Tuesday, so let me set the scene again, gently, in case you are starting to drift. You are on the southern coast of Africa, 100,000 years ago. You are with a band of a few dozen people exactly like us, in a cave above the sea. There are no cities anywhere on Earth, and there will be none for another 90,000 years. And so far, the day has been kind. Evening is when the cave becomes what it really is. Not a shelter, a home. The bulbs go into the ashes to roast. The last shells are shared around. People eat sitting close, hip to hip, and the talk gets looser and warmer as the sky outside goes purple. Children start to lean. Somebody, somewhere in the circle, is almost certainly telling a story. I have to be honest with you here, because that is our deal tonight. No story from that fire survives. Not one word from these particular people, on this particular coast. Stone keeps, and shell keeps, and ash keeps. Voices do not. But we know people sat like this, night after night, for thousands of generations. And everywhere on Earth that we have ever found people, without one single exception, we have found stories. Many scholars believe the long evening fire is exactly where language grew rich. Daylight talk is for work. Firelight talk is for everything else. For the day's gossip. For the dead. For the stars. For the things that might live in the dark, so we cannot quote the story being told around this fire. But we can be nearly certain there was one. Maybe about the sea, maybe about the old woman's grandmother, maybe about that boy and his limpet, told to make the circle laugh. And then comes my favourite part of the whole day. They make the beds. Watch what they actually do, because it is not simple. First, the old bedding, gone flat and stale, is gathered up and burned. Then a layer of clean ashes is spread on the cave floor, smooth as a sheet. And on top of the ash go fresh sheaves of grass, thick and springy, laid the way you would lay a quilt. Why the ash? Because ash is a wall against the small biting things of the world. Ticks and crawling insects cannot cross fine powder easily. It clogs them and dries them out. The ash layer is bug-proofing. It is a mattress protector, invented before the mattress. And in at least one place, they went a step further. On top of the grass, people laid leaves from the camphor bush, a plant with a sharp, clean smell that biting insects hate. People in parts of Africa still use those same leaves the same way today. Here is how we know, and it is worth saying slowly. In a cave in the east of southern Africa, a place called Border Cave, diggers found those exact layers. Ash, then grass, then the traces of those sharp-smelling leaves. Burned, swept, and laid again, over and over. The oldest of those beds is about 200,000 years old, twice as old as our Tuesday night. Let that settle for a moment, right where you are lying. The oldest bed we know of is 200,000 years old. People have been doing exactly what you are doing right now, lying down on something soft, clean, and deliberately made, since before our whole species story was half told. You are not doing a modern thing tonight. You are doing one of the oldest human things there is. One by one, the band lies down. The fire is banked low, and the old woman gives it a last look, the way she did at dawn. Outside, the stars come out in numbers you and I have never seen, because there is not one lamp lit anywhere on the planet to dim them. Somebody murmurs. Somebody laughs once in the dark. At the end of some last joke we will never hear. Then there is just breathing, and the sea. And that is the whole day. No battle, no invention, no first of anything. Just food found, tools made, children taught, stories told, beds laid. Tomorrow will be close to the same, and so will 10,000 tomorrows after that. Now, here is the quiet, enormous thing about that ordinary Tuesday. Days like it happened, one after another, for 150,000 years. Not thousands of days like it. Billions. Almost none of them left a single trace. A little ash, a heap of shells, a flake of stone in the dirt. The rest of it, all the laughter and grief and gossip and skill of whole lifetimes, simply went where sound goes. That is what the missing years are actually made of. Not emptiness, days, but every once in a very long while, on a day almost exactly like this one, somebody did something extra, something that was not food, and not safety, and not shelter, something that had no reason to exist at all, except that a mind wanted it to. Remember that shell at the back of the cave, with its crust of dried red? Some morning, on some Tuesday, very near this one, a pair of hands is going to pick it up again and grind fresh red into it and use it. And when we found what those hands left behind, 100,000 years later, it quietly changed what we thought a human being was. That is where we are going next, to the first colour. Come back to the cave with me. It is another morning, close enough to our Tuesday that nothing much has changed. The tide is out, the fire is fed, and the children are already down on the rocks. But this morning, the hands we met in the opening of our story go to the back wall. They lift the abalone shell, the one with the crust of dried red inside. They settle down in the good light with it, unhurried, like a woman taking out her sewing, or a man opening his toolbox on a Saturday. And for the next little while, someone 100,000 years ago is going to make paint. We should watch closely, because when we found the leftovers of this exact kind of mourning, sealed in the dust of a real cave on this coast, it quietly rewrote the story of the human mind. Let us start with the red itself. The red is a soft stone called ochre. It is rich in iron, which is why it carries the color of rust and of dried blood and of certain sunsets. You can find it in seams in the hills if you know where to look. These people knew where to look. Ochre is easy to love. Drag it across a harder rock and it leaves a mark, like a crayon. Grind it and you get a fine powder, the color of fire. Wet that powder and you get something very close to paint. Now, to be fair to the evidence, ochre was not only for beauty. Ground red powder is useful stuff. Many scholars believe it helped in curing animal hides. Mixed into glue, it made stone tools sit tighter in their handles. Rubbed on the skin, it may have blocked sun and biting insects. Some of the red these people carried was simply hardware, and finding good red was its own quiet craft. Ochre runs through the hills in seams, some dull and brown, some deep and rich as embers. People learn the difference the way we know brands. The best seams became known places, visited and revisited, and many scholars believe lumps from a favorite source traveled in bags and hands for generations. When a band broke camp, somebody packed the red. It made the list every time for 100,000 years. But keep your eye on that shell, because what was mixed in it on a morning like this one was not tool glue. And the way we know that is one of the finest detective stories in all of archaeology. First though, watch the work itself. We promise to. The maker settles cross-legged with the grindstone between her knees. I will say her, though the truth is, we cannot know. She takes the lump of ochre and works it against a stone in slow, even circles, and the sound is soft and steady, like a broom on a floor far away. Red powder gathers in the hollow of the grindstone. It is finer than flour. When there is enough, she sweeps it into the shell with the side of her hand, and her palm comes away the color of the evening sky. Then the rest of the recipe, piece by piece. A little charcoal from the cold edge of the fire, crushed. A knuckle of bone, already warmed among the embers, cracked so the soft marrow fat can be worked out. A splash of liquid, and then the bone stirrer, turning it all together in the shell, slowly, the way you stir something you do not want to spoil. The mix changes as she stirs. It stops being powder and fat and becomes one thing, thick and smooth and deeply, evenly red. She lifts the stirrer and draws a single line of it across the back of her wrist and looks at it in the light. Every painter who has ever lived knows that exact gesture. Is that scene a guess? In its small human details, yes, and I owe you that plainly. But every ingredient in it, every tool, even the shell it happens in, is real and was found lying together in one place. Which brings us to the cave where it was found. Let me take you for a moment 100,000 years forward to the year 2008. On this same stretch of South African coast, there is a cave that the diggers call Blombos. Say it once and let it go. Blombos. It sits above the sea, much like the cave in our story. Archaeologists have been working it, gently, for years, peeling back time, a few centimetres of sand at a time. It is worth pausing on how slow and careful that work is, because the care is what makes the story trustworthy. Every scoop of cave floor is sieved, so that nothing, not a bead, not a fishbone, slips through. Every find is mapped in place before it is lifted. A good season's digging might deepen the pit by less than the length of your hand, and this cave came with a gift. Again and again over the ages, wind-blown dune sand poured in and sealed the floor like a page being turned. Each sealed layer is a shut book, safe from mixing. The scientists can even date the sand itself, because buried grains keep a kind of memory of the last time they saw sunlight. And that memory can be read in a lab and turned into a number of years. So when I tell you a layer is 100,000 years old, that is not a romantic guess. It is measured, checked, and argued over by people who make careers of doubting each other. And in a layer 100,000 years old, they found something that made careers stop and turn around. 2 abalone shells, sitting where someone had set them down. Inside each one, a dried residue of red. Around the shells lay a whole workshop, complete. Lumps of ochre, with flat faces where they had been rubbed down. Grindstones dusted with red. Pieces of bone for stirring and scooping. Charcoal from the fire. Every part of the job still together, like a painter's table left tidy at the end of a working day. When the chemists went through that residue, they could read the recipe, like a card in a kitchen. Ochre, ground fine, charcoal, crushed bone, lightly heated first, whose fat and marrow helped bind the mix, a liquid to bring it all together, stirred in the shell with the bone. Think about what a recipe means. A recipe is steps, held in order, in the mind. It is knowing that this powder, plus that fat, plus fire, makes a thing which is none of them. Many scholars call this the oldest evidence of chemistry we have. Not chemistry in a lab, chemistry at a hearth, in a shell, from memory. And there is a quieter detail, my favourite one. The kit was stored. The shells were set down flat, kept together, left in place. Whoever mixed this paint meant to come back to it. That is a workbench. And a workbench means tomorrow. It means a person who planned, who owned things, who had a project. 100,000 years ago, somebody had a project. So the honest question lands on us. What was the paint for? Here I owe you the truth, because that is our agreement tonight. We do not know. The paint itself survived in the shell. Whatever it was painted onto, all those years ago, did not. Skin, hide, wood, a wall long since weathered away. The canvas is gone. Only the palette remains. But the cave was not finished telling its story, because in layers a little higher, a little younger, the diggers found the marks. In 2002, the team announced 2 pieces of ochre, rubbed flat and smooth, with lines cut deliberately into their faces. Straight lines, crossing each other in a careful netted pattern. The cuts were sure and even. Whoever made them had done it before. A few years later came 6 more engraved pieces, from layers spread across 30,000 years of the cave's life. Different hands, different centuries, versions of the same crossing pattern. Not one piece then, a habit, a tradition being handed down. And then, in a layer about 73,000 years old, they found the flake, a small chip of smooth stone, and on it, drawn in ochre crayon, that same crossing pattern of lines. The pigment sat on top of the stone, Someone had held a point of red like a pencil and drawn. As far as we know, at this moment, that little flake carries the oldest drawing ever found, older than every cave lion and every painted horse in Europe by tens of thousands of years. Now slow down with me here, because this is the heart of the whole night, and it deserves a slow minute. Notice the date. The paint workshop is about 100,000 years old. The drawing is about 73,000 years old. Between them lies some 27,000 years. That is more time than there is between you and the painted caves of France. And across that whole stretch, people kept coming back to the same cave above the sea, and red kept mattering to them. And notice the pattern itself. Lines, crossing lines. It appears cut into ochre in one age and drawn in crayon in another, thousands of years apart. When a mark repeats like that, across generations, it is very hard to call it doodling. Repetition is the fingerprint of meaning. But what meaning? There, honestly, the floor of evidence ends. It could have been a mark of a family, or a count of something precious, or a map of nets or stars, or a sign whose sense was so obvious to them that no one ever needed to explain it. Many scholars believe it was a symbol, a mark that stood for something in the mind of its maker. Beyond that, silence. I think of it as the oldest sentence we cannot read. Somebody said something, in red, on stone. It mattered enough to say again and again for 1,000 generations. And the language it was written in is gone, forever. Except for this. The saying survived. The meaning did not. And I want to stay with that idea a moment longer, because it is bigger than one scratch stone. What we are really watching, in those crossing lines, may be the birth of the most powerful thing our species ever did. The making of a symbol. Think about what a symbol is. It is a mark, or a sound, that stands for something else. The lines on the stone are not the thing they mean. They point to it. And that simple trick, letting one thing stand for another, is the root of nearly everything human. It is what a word is. The sound you make for water is not water. It points to water. It is what money is, and what a wedding ring is, and what a flag is, and what every letter on every page you have ever read is. A whole world built on marks that stand for things. And here, 100,000 years ago, we may be seeing the very first buds of it. Someone made a mark that meant something. Not a picture of a deer, not a copy of a real thing, but an abstract sign. Lines that stood for an idea in a mind. We cannot read it, but the fact that it could be made at all tells us the machinery was already there. The mind that cut those lines was a mind ready for language, ready for symbols, ready, one day, far down the long road, for writing itself. The first colour and the first symbol may be the same red marks, and everything you know, every word in your head, is their distant descendant. The cave held one more secret, and it is the tenderest of the three. In layers about 75,000 years old, the diggers kept finding tiny sea snail shells, no bigger than your smallest fingernail. Dozens of them. Each one had a small hole worked through it, in the same spot. Around those holes, the shell was worn smooth and shiny, the way a doorknob is worn by hand. Those shells were beads. The holes were for a cord. The shine came from being worn against skin or clothing for a long time. The wear marks even hint at how they hung. Shells rubbing on shells, in a row, the way beads knock gently together on a moving body. 41 of them were found, whether they were one proud necklace or many small ones whether they belong to a woman, a man, a child, or passed from neck to neck down a family. The shells cannot say. People of every age and kind have worn beads in every culture we have ever met, so your guess is honestly as good as the scholars here. And here is the touch that gets me. Those little snails do not live on the open shore by the cave. They live in quiet river mouths, the nearest of which lie a good 20 kilometers away, about half a day's determined walk. Somebody made that walk, or traded with someone who had, for the sake of very small, very pretty shells with no food in them at all. Somebody, 75,000 years ago, got dressed up. Sit with that word a moment. To wear a string of beads is to say, I am someone. Someone particular. See me. It is a self, worn on the outside. When we found those beads, worn shiny, we were not looking at survival. We were looking at a person, letting the world know who they were, in the oldest voice we have ever heard say it. Before we leave this chapter, one small wondering, offered as exactly that. Why red? Because it is nearly always red in the deep past. Not the easy greens of the world, not the endless blues of that sea outside the cave. Red, again and again, on every continent where our kind has ever left a mark. Maybe it is simply that ochre was there, and kind to the hand, but it is hard not to notice what else is red. Blood is, fire is, and its heart, the low sun is, are the two most important moments of every day. Lips are, and the flush of a face, and a newborn, in the first minute of every life there has ever been. Red is the colour of the body, and of everything the body most needs and most fears. If you were a mind waking up to itself 100,000 years ago, and you wanted one colour that meant alive, you would not have to think about it long. Many scholars have wandered along these lines. No one can prove it. I offer it to you as a thought to hold on the edge of sleep, no more. So let us gather the three finds, gently, like shells into a bag. A paint kit with a recipe, stored for tomorrow, 100,000 years old. A crossing pattern, said again and again in engraving and in crayon, that meant something we will never recover. A string of beads, carried from far away, worn until they shone. None of these things fed anyone. None of them kept anyone warm or safe. Every one of them took time and skill and walking and planning, away from the plain business of staying alive. And people gave that time, gladly, age after age. That is the quiet headline of this chapter. Long before cities, long before writing, long before anything we are taught to call civilization, minds exactly like yours were already doing the extra thing. Making colour, making marks, making themselves beautiful. The urge you feel to decorate a room, or wear the shirt that feels like you, or draw a line that pleases you for no reason, is not a modern luxury. It is 100,000 years old, at the very least. It may be the most human thing we do, and the red thread does not end here. Remember the colour. Much later tonight, in a different place, we are going to meet this same red one final time, laid down with unbearable care in the earth. But that is for the end of our story, and we are still near its beginning. For now, think back to those little shells, carried 20 kilometers from a river mouth to a cave. Half a day's walk. A small journey for a small treasure, but scattered across this old continent in the dust of other camps. We keep finding treasures that made journeys no person could walk. Sharp black glass, resting hundreds of kilometers from the only mountains that could have birthed it. Seashells, deep inland. a month's walk from any sea. Things in a world with no roads, no money, and no strangers you could trust, that could not walk, and yet moved. How they moved is one of the loveliest puzzles in the whole deep past. And the answer, as far as we can see it, is that we have been holding hands across the horizon for a very, very long time. Let us follow the black glass and find out how. Let us leave the coast for a while and go inland and back a little in time. Picture a wide green valley in the east of Africa. It runs north to south, farther than you could walk in a month, held between long walls of hills. Down its floor lies a string of shallow lakes, pale and flat, shining like spilled milk in the morning. Around them, grassland and flat-topped trees, and grazing animals in numbers you have never seen. This is a good place to be alive. The lakes bring animals, and the animals bring people. Small bands move across this country, the way weather does, following the rain and the herds. And this valley is where we find one of the oldest and strangest clues in the whole human story. A clue about reaching, about how, long before roads, long before money, long before you could trust a stranger, things began to travel much farther than any single person ever did. To understand the strangeness, we have to talk, gently, about a kind of stone. The stone is called obsidian. It is not really a stone at all, in the ordinary sense. It is glass, natural glass, made when a volcano pours out lava so fast and hot that it cools before it can turn grainy. What is left is smooth and black and shining, like the surface of still water at night. And obsidian does something no ordinary rock can do. When you strike it right, it breaks in long, smooth curves, and every fresh edge comes off sharper than steel. Sharper, honestly, than almost anything you own. A blade of fresh obsidian can be so fine that its edge is only a few atoms across. Surgeons, even today, sometimes use obsidian scalpels for the cleanest possible cut. So if you were a toolmaker in this valley, obsidian was treasure. A good black core could give you blade after blade after blade, each one keen enough to skin, to carve, to cut a hide into clothing. People wanted it. People who had it were richer, in the only way that mattered then, than people who did not. But here is the catch, and the whole chapter turns on it. Obsidian is picky about where it is born. It only forms in certain places, near certain volcanoes, where the lava did the right thing at the right speed. You cannot find it just anywhere. You find it where the earth made it, and nowhere else. Which raises a simple question, with a very strange answer. If obsidian is only born in a few places, then how far from home do we find it in people's hands? Let me take you to a real place, with a plain name. The diggers call it the Sibilo School Road Site, in the Baringo country of Kenya. Say it once and let it go. It is a spot in that green valley where people camped and worked stone and moved on and left their chips behind in the dirt. When the diggers sorted the obsidian from that camp, they did something clever. Every obsidian source, every volcano that ever made the stuff, has its own faint chemical signature baked in, its own fingerprint. And with the right machine, you can read a single black flake and say, with confidence, which mountain it was born in. So they read the flakes, and most of the obsidian at that camp did not come from the nearest source. It did not come from the second nearest either. Most of it came from a place 166 kilometers away. Sit with that number for a moment. 166 kilometers. That is 100 miles near enough. A hard, long journey on foot, across a valley full of rivers and animals and other bands, with no road to follow, and no map but memory. And here is the part that stops the breath. That camp is about 200,000 years old. 200,000 years ago, black glass was traveling 100 miles, long before farming, long before villages, long before, as far as we know, a single word had ever been written or a single wheel had ever turned. The glass made a journey that took real effort, real risk, and real knowing. Now, we have to be honest here, because that is our promise tonight. Nobody watched this happen. We cannot say exactly how the glass moved, and the honest truth is that scholars argue about it, warmly, to this day. So let me lay out what they argue, plainly, and tell you where the evidence runs thin. The first idea is the simplest. Maybe people just walked. Maybe a band ranged that wide, over months and seasons, and picked the glass up themselves at the source and carried it home. People on foot who know their land can cover astonishing ground. This may well be part of the answer, but there is a problem with walking alone as the whole story. 100 miles crosses other people's country. It crosses rivers and dry stretches, and the ranges of bands who might not be glad to see you. And the deeper diggers look, the more they find not just glass moving, but glass moving in patterns that look less like one long walk and more like many shorthands. Which brings us to the second idea, and the one that many scholars now lean toward. The glass did not travel in one journey. It traveled in many, hand to hand to hand. Picture it like this. A band near the volcano gathers more glass than it needs, because glass is easy for them to reach. When they meet their neighbours at a shared waterhole in the dry season, they hand some over, as a gift, as a greeting, as a way of saying, we are friends, remember us. Those neighbours keep some, use some, and pass some on again to the next band over, at the next meeting, in the next season. No single person walks 100 miles. But the glass does. It crosses the whole valley in relay, over years, carried a little way at a time by people who never dreamed how far it would go. Each of them just handed a bit of black stone to a neighbour they wanted to stay on good terms with. If that is right, and the pattern of the finds suggests it often was, then what we are really looking at is not a trade route. It is a web of friendships, a net of small kindnesses, stretched across 100 miles of grassland, 200,000 years ago. Let me set the scene again, gently, in case you are drifting. We are in a long green valley in the east of Africa, some 200,000 years ago. Black volcanic glass, the sharpest stone in the world, is somehow moving 100 miles from the only mountain that made it. And the best guess we have is that it moved the way good news moves through a village, person to person, out of goodwill, one friendly hand to the next. And obsidian is not the only thing that made these impossible journeys. There were the shells. Far inland, at camps 100 miles and more from any sea, the diggers keep finding small seashells, little snail shells, pierced for a cord, exactly like the beads we met on the coast. But these are deep in the interior, in dry country, where no ocean has reached for as long as there have been people to miss it. Somebody carried those shells inland, or more likely, somebody handed them inland, the same way the glass moved. A pretty shell from the coast, passed hand to hand, valley to valley, until it came to rest around the neck of a person who had never seen the sea, and perhaps never would. A gift that arrived carrying a rumour of blue water and salt air from the far edge of the known world. And the distances are real, and they are startling. In North Africa, the diggers have found little seashells, pierced for stringing, in caves that sit well over 100 miles from any coast, and dating back more than 80,000 years. Think of that. 80,000 years ago, a small shell from the ocean had already travelled further than most people of that world would walk in a lifetime, to hang at the throat of someone deep inland who knew the sea only as a story. It was not food. It was not a tool. It was pure meaning. A small, beautiful thing worth moving across 100 miles of a roadless world, simply because a person wanted it. And another person, somewhere down the line, was willing to pass it along, and it was not only shells and glass. Later, across the grasslands, people made beads from ostrich eggshell, ground into little discs as even as coins, and those too moved in a steady, patient current across enormous distances from the region where they were made to the hands of people far away. Everywhere the diggers look, in that deep past, they find the same quiet fact. Beautiful, useless, treasured things, moving across distances no owner ever walked. The whole ancient world, it turns out, was gently in motion, passing its small treasures hand to hand across the horizon. Why go to such trouble for a shell you cannot eat, or a stone you already have a rougher version of? That is the real question. And I think the answer is the tender heart of this whole chapter. Before we answer that, follow the black glass a little further, because the journey is stranger and grander than one hand passing to the next. Picture the whole web of it, spread across the land. A band near the volcano gathers the glass and hands some to their neighbours at a summer waterhole. Those neighbours carry it through their season and hand some on to the next band over at the next gathering, and those pass it on again. The glass moves like a rumour, like a song, like news of a birth, drifting outward across the country in every direction, a little at a time, hand to hand. A single sharp flake, struck from a mountain, might pass through 10 sets of hands, and 10 friendships, and 100 miles, and outlive every person who ever carried it. The person who first napped it never knew where it would end. The person who finally used it never knew where it began. Between them stretched a chain of people who would never meet, linked only by a piece of black glass moving slowly down the line. And here is the wonder of it. There was no plan. No one designed this. No king ordered it. No market set a price. No map was drawn. And yet, out of nothing but countless small acts of neighbours being generous to neighbours, a web grew that spanned a continent. Goods moved across distances no single person could walk, carried by a network that no one built and no one ran, made entirely of trust between people who mostly never saw each other. It is one of the first great human structures. And it was invisible, and it was held together by nothing but goodwill. So why? Why give away something valuable to a neighbour you see once a year? Many scholars believe these gifts were never really about the glass or the shells at all. They were about the bond. Think about the world these people lived in. It was generous on a good day, but it was also dangerous, and it could turn on you. A drought could empty your valley. A sickness could thin your band. A run of bad luck could leave you, one hard season, with nothing. And when that day came, the only thing standing between you and the end was other people, a neighboring band who would take you in, who would share their waterhole and their hunting ground and their fire, because you had a bond with them, because you were not strangers. So how do you build a bond with a band you only see now and then, at the edges of your range? You cannot sign a treaty. You cannot write a promise. But you can give. You can hand over something that took effort, something beautiful, something that says, I thought of you, and I want us to be friends when the hard times come. The beads and the black glass were the promise, made solid. Every gift was a small deposit in a bank of goodwill against the day you might need to draw on it. Many scholars call this exactly what it is. It is insurance. The oldest insurance in the world, paid not in money, but in gifts, and measured not in coins, but in trust. And the loveliest proof of this did not come from stone at all. It came from eggshells. Across the grasslands of southern Africa, people made beads from the shells of ostrich eggs. They would break the thick shell, chip it into little discs, bore a hole in each one, and grind a whole string of them smooth and even, so they were as alike as coins. It was slow, patient work, and the result was a thing of real beauty. A string of small white beads, plain and perfect. Now, ostrich eggshell also carries a faint chemical signature drawn from the ground and water where the ostrich fed. So once again, the diggers could read where a bead was born and compare it to where it was found. And what they found was a map of friendship drawn across the land. Beads made in one region turned up, again and again, hundreds of kilometers away, in the hands of people in another. Not once, not by accident, as a steady, patient flow, running in both directions, for tens of thousands of years. The oldest beads in this exchange are about 33,000 years old, and the same practice was still alive, in the same lands, when the first anthropologists arrived to write it down. Because that is the last turn of this story, and the one I most want you to carry into sleep. This custom did not die out in the deep past. It was still being practiced by living people within the memory of our grandparents. Among some of the peoples of the Kalahari, there was a custom, and by some accounts there still is, of giving gifts to build and hold friendships across distance. A person keeps a network of partners in far-off bands, and with each partner, over the years, they trade gifts. A strand of eggshell beads given now will be answered by another gift later from the other hand. The point of the gift was never the object. It was the thread it wove between two people. If drought came, or sickness, or sorrow, you could walk to your partner's fire and be taken in, because the beads between you had been saying, for years, we are bound, you and I. Anthropologists who lived among these communities came to understand that the beads were not jewelry. They were a safety net, worn on the body, a whole insurance system, with no paper, no banks, no writing, only trust, and the patient giving of small, beautiful things. And when they read the ancient beads and saw the same patterns running back 30,000 years and more, they understood they were looking at the same net, older than any nation, older than any market. One of the oldest human inventions there is. Not a tool or a weapon, but a way of turning strangers into kin. So let us gather this chapter up, the way a band gathers its gifts before a long walk. A blade of black glass, born at one volcano, resting in the dirt 100 miles away, 200,000 years ago. A seashell, carried inland to a person who never saw the sea. a white bead of eggshell, made in one grassland and worn in another, passed along a chain of friends for 30,000 years. None of these things walked. Every one of them travelled, further than its owner ever did, carried by the oldest engine we have. Not the wheel, not the sail. The simple human habit of giving something good to someone you hope will be your friend. We began tonight in a cave, with a single pair of hands grinding red paint for no reason but meaning. Now we have watched those same kinds of hands reach across 100 miles of danger, not to take, but to give, to make a stranger into a neighbour, and a neighbour into kin, against the hard days everyone knew were coming. There is one more kind of reaching we have not yet touched, not reaching across distance, but reaching across time. The moment a mind first held onto a number and made a mark to keep it, so that it would not be forgotten when the moon had turned and the season had changed. That is where we go next, to the first count. Let us go back to the fire at night. Not the coast this time, inland and high up, on the stony flank of a range of hills in the south of Africa. It is late. The band is asleep in the shelter of a cave, on beds of fresh grass laid over ash, just like the ones we watched being made on that first Tuesday. But one person is still awake by the fire. They are sitting close to the warmth, bent over something small and pale held in both hands. It is a piece of bone, and they are working at it with a sharp stone flake, slowly, carefully, making a small cut, then another, not to shape a tool, not to make it pretty, for a different reason entirely, and a stranger one. They are keeping count. To feel why this matters, we have to talk about counting itself for a moment, gently, because it is easy and it is hard at the same time. You have known numbers your whole life. They feel like part of the world, like water or sky. But numbers are not out there in the world. You never trip over a 3. You never find a 7 lying in the grass. Numbers live only in the mind. They are one of the purest things a mind ever made. And here is the strange part. To count, you need an idea that does not come naturally at all. You need to see that 3 deer and 3 stones and 3 fingers all share a thing. Not their dearness or their stoneness, just their 3ness. The number, floating free of the things. That leap from 3 things to the idea of 3 is one of the deepest a human mind can take. Somebody, out there in a deep past, took it, and once in a very long while, one of them left us proof. Now, do not imagine these people had no numbers at all until that leap. They surely counted the way we all first count, without knowing we are doing it. A mother knows when one of her children is missing, without needing a word for how many she has. A hunter knows a herd has thinned. 2 hands of people can share out food, so that everyone gets a fair part, long before anyone can say the word for the number in their heads. That kind of counting is old and warm and everywhere. It lives in the body and the eye. You feel it when a place seems too crowded or too empty, or just right. It needs no marks, no words, no bone. But there is a wall that kind of counting hits. Your eye can tell 3 from 4 in a blink. It can tell 4 from 5 with a little effort. Past that, the plain seeing fails. Show a person 7 stones and 8 stones, and without counting them, one by one, almost no one can tell which pile is bigger. The mind simply cannot hold the difference at a glance. And that is the wall the notches broke through. The moment you can set one mark against one thing and another mark against another and keep going, you are free of the limit of the eye. You can hold a number far bigger than you could ever see at once. You can carry a count across days, across a journey, across a whole turning of the moon, and never lose your place. A row of notches is a memory that does not fade. It is the first time a mind reached past what the body alone could hold. The proof was found in a cave, in a range called the Lebombo Mountains, in the small country of Eswatini, in the south of Africa. It is a good cave, a dry and sheltered one, lived in on and off for a very, very long time. In fact, it is the same cave, Border Cave, where the oldest beds we know of were found. People slept well there for 100,000 years and more. And in the old layers of that cave, the diggers found a small piece of bone. It was a length of leg bone from a baboon. Someone, long ago, had taken it and cut notches into it along its length. Small, deliberate, evenly spaced cuts. When the scientists looked closely, under the microscope, they could see the marks were made on purpose, by a human hand, one at a time. They counted the notches. There were 29 notches, cut into a bone, roughly 43,000 years ago. That is the oldest tally we have ever found, the oldest surviving thing a human being made specifically to hold a number, older than any city, any farm, any written word, by tens of thousands of years. Long before anyone wrote the number 29, someone cut it into a bone by firelight, one notch at a time. Now, I owe you honesty here, because that is our deal. And this is exactly the kind of place where a careless storyteller would start inventing. We know the notches are real. We know they were made by a person, on purpose. What we do not know, and cannot know, is what they were counting. So let me lay out what many scholars believe, and mark clearly where the ground gets soft. Here is the idea that has captured the most imaginations. Look again at the number, 29. Now look up. The moon, from one new moon to the next, takes about 29.5 days to complete its cycle. Thin crescent, to half, to full, and all the way back to dark. 29 days. Near enough? Over and over. Forever. You can see why the idea is hard to resist. Maybe the person by the fire was counting the moon, making one notch each night, watching the pale disk swell and shrink, keeping a record of the one great clock hanging in the sky. If that is true, then this little bone is not just the first count. It is the first calendar. The first time a human being tied a mark on the ground to a rhythm in the heavens. And you have to understand what the moon was, to people like these, to feel why it might be worth carving into bone. To us, the moon is a pretty thing we glance at now and then. To them, it was the great clock of the whole world, and very nearly the only one they had. There were no other clocks, no calendars on a wall, no days of the week, no dates. But the moon kept perfect, patient time, over and over, and a person who watched it closely could read the future in it. They could know how many nights until it would be full and bright enough to travel by. They could tie its turning to the things that mattered most, when the great herds would come through, when the fish would run in the river, when a certain plant would fruit, or a certain bird would return, when perhaps a child was due to be born. The moon was a timetable for the whole of life, written in light, and the band that read it well ate better and moved smarter than the band that did not. So counting the moon was not idle. It may have been one of the most useful things a person could do. To hold the rhythm of the sky in a row of notches was to hold a little bit of the future in your hand. And there is a wonder folded inside the usefulness. To make that record, someone had to notice, first, that the nights repeat, that the pattern comes around again, that the world is not just one thing after another, but a great wheel turning. That noticing that the world has rhythms you can learn and lean on is the beginning of every science there has ever been. And here is something we forget, living as we do under our bright electric skies. These people had the greatest view of the heavens that any human has ever had. No streetlights, no haze of a city on the horizon, no glow at all, anywhere on Earth, to dim the stars. When the sun went down, the sky that opened over them was a thing you and I have almost never seen. Thousands upon thousands of stars, the great pale river of the Milky Way arching from edge to edge, so bright it cast a shadow, the moon moving through it, and the wandering planets, and the slow turn of the whole vault through the night. They lived under that every single night of their lives, and they watched it. Of course they watched it. It was the largest, most beautiful, most reliable thing in their whole world, and it was free, and it was always there. They would have known the stars the way you know the streets of your town, which ones rose when, which ones marked the seasons, which returned each year with the cold, and which with the warmth. Many scholars believe the sky was humanity's first great book, read for tens of thousands of years before we wrote a single word, and that our very oldest stories, the ones about the patterns in the stars, may reach back into exactly this deep past. The notch on the bone and the eye on the sky are the same reaching mind. Someone out there was already looking up and keeping track and trying to understand. And there is a gentler, closer possibility that many scholars have raised. A cycle of about 29 days also lives inside the human body, in the rhythms of a woman's month. It may be that the first person to keep a careful count was a woman, tracking her own body's clock. If so, then the oldest mathematician we know of may well have been a mother or a daughter, counting something deeply her own. But now the honest word, and I want to say it plainly, we do not know that any of this is true. The bone is broken at one end, so the 29 notches we see might not be the whole count. There might have been more, and some careful scholars look at the same marks and shrug. Maybe, they say, the notches were just to help the hand grip the bone. Maybe they were a record of something we would never guess. A count of days walked, or animals seen, or people in a family. Maybe the meaning was so ordinary to the person who cut them that they never dreamed anyone would wonder. That is the truth of the deep past. We are holding a single sentence, cut in bone, in a language of one. We can see that it is a count. We cannot read what it counted. And you know what? I find that more beautiful, not less, because whatever the notches meant, the deep thing is already there in the very first one. Someone looked at the passing world, the falling nights, the turning moon, the quiet rhythms of a life, and decided that it was worth keeping track, worth holding on to, worth not letting slip away. That decision, to catch a piece of time and pin it down so it would not be forgotten, is the seed of every calendar, every record, every number you have ever used. It starts here, with one person, one bone, and a small sharp stone, by a fire, under the moon. And I want to slow down on how strange and how enormous that decision really was, because it is easy to rush past. Until that first notch, everything a person knew lived inside their own head. Every memory, every count, every fact was held in the soft, forgetful, mortal flesh of a single mind. And when that mind grew tired, or old, or died, whatever it held was gone, unless it had been spoken to another mind in time. Knowledge was a candle, passed from hand to hand in the dark. And every so often, a candle went out, and took its light with it. The notch changed that, forever. A mark on a bone is a memory that lives outside the body. It does not grow tired. It does not misremember. It does not die when its maker dies. Whoever cut those 29 notches could set the bone down and sleep and wake, and the count would still be there, exactly as it was left, holding its place with a patience no living mind can match. For the first time, a person could trust something outside themselves to remember for them. That is the true birth of the record. It is a small cousin of writing itself, thousands and thousands of years early. And every library, every book, every note you have ever scribbled to yourself so you would not forget is a child of that first idea, that a mark can hold a thought still and carry it forward, past sleep, past forgetting, past death. The story does not stop with that one bone either. It grows, move forward in time, far forward, some 20,000 more years, to a place by a lake in the heart of Africa, in what is now the Congo. There, the diggers found another notched bone. This one is younger, only around 20,000 years old, but it is far richer. This bone, called the Ishango bone, is covered not with a single row of notches, but with 3 columns of them, and the notches are gathered into groups. Some people who have studied it believe the groups are not just a plain tally anymore. They think they may show patterns, runs of numbers, perhaps a way of doubling, perhaps something even more clever. The scholars argue about the Ishango bone as warmly as they argue about the Lubombo one, and I will not pretend the case is settled, because it is not. But you can feel the direction of travel, from one person cutting 29 plain notches to someone 20,000 years later cutting numbers into groups and patterns. The count is becoming arithmetic. The seed is becoming a garden. And once you start looking for the impulse behind these bones, you find it everywhere in us, running very deep. The need to keep track is not some dry, cold thing that arrived with accountants and schools. It is warm. It is human. It is tangled up with everything we care about. Think of all the things a person in the deep past might have needed to count. And why? The days until the band would move, so no one was caught by the first snow. The number of children in the group, so that when they crossed a river or broke camp in the dark, someone could feel, in a glance, that all of them were still there. The days a hunting party had been gone, so that worry could turn, at the right time, into going out to look. Even perhaps the dead, the ones who are not coming back. There is something in us that wants to number the people we love, to hold them accounted for, to know that none have slipped away uncounted into the dark. That is what a tally really is. Underneath the arithmetic, it is care, made into a number. It is a way of refusing to let things blur together and be lost. Every notch says, this one happened, and I am keeping it. This night mattered. This person is one of mine. That count of the moon, whoever made it and whatever it was for, comes from the same place in us as a parent counting heads at the door, or an old person counting the years they were given. It is the deep human wish to not lose track of what matters. And it is at least 43,000 years old. So let us sit with what these bones really tell us before we move on. Every clock in your home, every calendar on your wall, every birthday you have ever counted, every year you have ever added to your age, every schedule and timetable and countdown, all of it grows from the same root, the simple, world-changing idea that time and number can be caught and held and kept. And that idea did not arrive with cities or writing or schools. It was already alive, tens of thousands of years earlier, in the hands of people sitting by fires under a sky far darker and fuller of stars than any you have ever seen. They watched the moon. They felt the rhythms of their own days. And some of them, quietly, began to keep count. There is one more thing worth noticing. To make a mark that stands for a night or a moon is to believe that tomorrow will come, and that today is worth remembering when it does. Counting is a quiet act of hope. It says, there will be more, and I will be here to see it. And I do not want to lose track of the beautiful, ordinary passing of my life. We have watched these people make colour for no reason but meaning. We have watched them carry gifts across 100 miles of danger to turn strangers into kin. And now, we have watched one of them catch time itself and hold it in a row of notches on a bone. Make, give, count. 3 of the oldest reaches of the human mind, all here, all long before the first city. There's one more reach of the mind we have not touched, not making, not giving, not counting. Something with no use at all, that fed no one and counted nothing, and yet mattered so much that people spent hours of their short lives on it. Look again at that little hollow bone lying by the fire. It is not a tool. It is not a tally. It is a flute. And that is where we go next, to the first song. Stay by the fire with me a little longer. But now the land outside is different. We have moved far north, into what is now Europe, and the world has turned cold. Winter here is long and hard. Beyond the mouth of the cave, there is snow and a wind that means it. Inside, a small band is gathered close around the flames, wrapped in fur, warm enough. The day's work is done. Everyone is fed. And in the quiet that comes after a meal, one of them reaches for a small object kept carefully aside. It is a slender length of hollow bone, pale in the firelight, with a row of little holes cut along its side. They lift it to their lips, and they begin to play. We cannot hear the tune. That sound left the world tens of thousands of years ago, and no ear remembers it. But we know for certain that the sound was made, because the flute survived. And I want to stop, right at the start of this chapter, on how strange and how wonderful that is. Because of everything we have watched these people do, this is the one that has no reason at all. Think back over the night so far. The paint, we could argue, marked things, or protected skin. The gifts across the grasslands built alliances that kept people alive. The count on the bone may have tracked the moon, or the seasons, useful things. Every mystery so far, if you pushed hard enough, you could tie to survival somehow. Not this one. You cannot eat music. It will not keep you warm, or drive off a wolf, or feed a child. A song does nothing for the body at all, and yet someone sat through the long cold and spent hours of a short life carving a hollow bone into an instrument just to fill the dark with sound that mattered to no one but the soul. That is the purest thing we will find tonight. Let us go and meet the flute. The cave is a real one, in the south of Germany, in a region of gentle hills called the Swabian Alb. The diggers call it Hohle Fels. Say it once and let it go. It is another good cave, dry and deep, lived in by some of the first modern people to walk into a frozen Europe. In the year 2008, working through the old layers, the diggers found the pieces of it, a flute, broken but nearly complete. When they fitted the fragments together, they had something astonishing, a slender pipe with 5 carefully cut finger holes, and its blowing end shaped with real skill. They looked at what it was made from, and the answer is almost too fitting to believe. It was carved from the wing bone of a great vulture, a griffin vulture, a bird with a wingspan wider than a man is tall. Someone took the hollow bone of a creature that owns the sky and turned it into a thing that owns the air in a different way, into music. That flute is about 40,000 years old, and by the careful judgment of most scholars, it is the oldest musical instrument we have ever found, older than any pyramid by tens of thousands of years, older than farming, older than writing, older than the wheel, by an amount of time the mind can barely hold. And it was not a lucky one-off. In the same handful of caves, the diggers found pieces of other flutes, made from bird bone and from mammoth ivory. Ivory is far harder to work than a hollow bird bone. To make a flute from ivory, you must split a tusk, hollow each half, carve the holes, and then seal the 2 halves back together so it holds air. That is patient, expert, deliberate craft for an object with no purpose but sound. This was not one strange person with an odd hobby. This was a tradition, a community of people, 40,000 years ago, in the frozen dark, who made music together and taught the making of it to the young and kept it alive for generations. When our kind first walked into Europe, we did not come only with spears and fire. We came singing. Let us sit for a moment in that cave and imagine what the music was for. Gently, because here we are guessing, and I will say so. Many scholars believe music did for these people roughly what it does for you. Think of when a song reaches you. It can calm a frightened child better than any word. It can pull a scattered group of people into one feeling, one rhythm, one breath. It can carry a memory of someone gone. It can make a hard night bearable, and a good one unforgettable. Around that fire, the flute may have done all of those things. Soothed the little ones towards sleep, marked a birth, or a death, or the turning of a season, bound the band together in the long dark of a northern winter, when the sun went low and stayed away for months, and there was everything to gain from keeping close and warm together. We cannot prove any single one of those, but we can be sure of the deep fact underneath them all. These people did not only want to survive, they wanted to feel and to share the feeling. They reached for beauty in the cold, and they made it with their own breath. Think especially of the winter, because that is where this flute was found, in the frozen north, and it changes the whole picture. Up there, the winter was not a season. It was a siege. The sun sank low and stayed away for months. The cold pressed in on the cave mouth. There was little to hunt and little to do but endure, day after short grey day, waiting for a spring that felt like it might never come. That is a hard thing for a mind to bear. It is the kind of long, dark, empty stretch that can hollow a person out and turn a band sullen and afraid. And into that long dark, someone brought music. Picture what that did. A child crying in the cold, and a soft tune to settle it towards sleep. The first lullaby, older than any word we could recognize. A band sitting heavy and silent as the wind howled, and a melody starting up, low, and drawing them slowly back toward one another. A death in the deep of winter. Someone loved and lost, and a sound made over the grief that said, without any words, we feel this together. You are not carrying it alone. Music cannot feed a starving winter camp, but it can hold a camp together until the food comes back. It can carry people across the dark places that silence cannot. Many scholars believe that this, more than anything, is what music was first for, not decoration. Survival of a different kind, the survival of the spirit through the long night. And there is one more thing the flute quietly tells us, in the placing of those 5 holes. Scholars have made copies of it, careful copies, and played them. And the notes that come out are not random. They fall into a scale that sounds to a modern ear musical, pleasant, ordered in a way that feels familiar. That is worth sitting with. The person who cut those holes was not just poking at a bone. They were listening. They cut a hole and blew and heard the note and moved the next hole to where it needed to be. They had an idea in their head of what sounded right, and they worked the bone until it matched. That is composition. That is an ear and a taste and a standard, 40,000 years old. And here is the fact that closes the case on how deep this runs. In all the world, across every people ever found, on every island and in every valley and desert and forest, we have never once met a group of humans without music. Not one. Languages differ. Gods differ. Tools and homes and foods all differ. But everyone sings. Everyone keeps a beat. It is as human as speech, and very nearly as old. So when we hold this little vulture bone pipe, we are not looking at the odd invention of one clever band. We are looking at the first surviving note of something that was already, even then, woven all the way through us. The band in the cold cave was not inventing music. They were doing what people simply do. They were singing because they were human, and being human means you sing. And here is a thought that goes even deeper, and I want you to sit with it because it changes what this flute really is. The flute is the oldest instrument we have found, but it is almost certainly not the oldest music, because you do not need a flute to make music. You do not need anything at all, except a body. And every one of these people carried the first instrument with them. Everywhere they went, from the day they were born. Think of what a body can do. It can clap. It can slap a thigh, or a chest, or a hollow log, and make a drum beat. It can stamp a rhythm into the ground with bare feet. And above all, it can sing with nothing but breath, and the voice, the oldest melody there is. None of that leaves a trace in the earth. A clap does not fossilize. A song vanishes the instant it is sung. So the music we can dig up, the bone flutes and the ivory pipes, is only the hard, surviving edge of something far older and far larger that left no mark at all. For every flute in the ground, there were surely tens of thousands of years of clapping and stamping and humming and singing that we will never hear and can never prove, but can be almost certain happened. The flute is not the start of the music. It is just the first piece of it, solid enough to last. And there is a reason music matters so much to us, a reason written deep in the body. that these people would have felt without ever needing to explain it. When people make music together, something happens that happens almost nowhere else. They line up. A group of separate people, each locked inside their own head, hears the same beat and starts to move to it together. Feet fall at the same moment. Voices join on the same note. Breath, even heartbeats, begin to pull toward one shared rhythm. For a little while, a crowd of separate souls becomes one thing, feeling one feeling, moving as one body. That is not a small trick. In a world where survival depended entirely on the band holding together, on people trusting one another and acting as one, the thing that could melt a group of individuals into a single warm whole was close to magic. Many scholars believe this is a large part of why music runs so deep in us. It is the glue of the group. It is how a scattered handful of tired, frightened people around a fire could become, for an evening, a family that felt like one heart. The flute and the clapping and the singing were not just pretty. They were the sound of a band becoming unbreakable. And music did one more thing, quietly, that may be the most important of all. It carried memory. Remember, these people had no writing. Nothing could be set down and kept. So how do you hold on to the things that must not be lost? The way to the good hunting grounds. The story of where your people came from. The name of a grandmother's grandmother. The warning about the poison plant. The lesson about the flood that came the year the river rose. All of it had to live in memory, and memory is fragile and fades, unless you do the thing that people everywhere discovered. You set it to music. A plain list of facts slips out of the mind like water, but a song stays. Put words to a tune. Give them a rhythm and a rhyme, and suddenly they lock into place and hold for a lifetime. You know this yourself. You have forgotten 1,000 things, but you still know every word of a song you have not heard since childhood. Many scholars believe this is one of the oldest jobs of music. Before books, songs were the books. The long-sung stories, the chants, the rhymes, were how a people carried its knowledge and its history and its dead forward through the generations, in nothing but breath and melody. So when that flute played in the cold cave, it may not have been only beauty. It may have been a library, singing. Now I have to be honest with you about an older, stranger find, because leaving it out would be a kind of lie. And honesty is the whole point of this night. Long before the German flutes, in a cave in what is now Slovenia, in a place called Divje Babe, the diggers found something that has caused an argument that will not end. It is a thick piece of leg bone from a young cave bear with a small row of round holes in it, and it is very old, perhaps 50 or 60,000 years old. Old enough that if a human made it, that human was almost certainly not one of us. It would have been a Neanderthal. You can feel the pull of it. A Neanderthal flute. Our cousins, the other kind of human, making music in the deep ice. It is a beautiful thought, but here the ground is soft, and I will not pretend otherwise. Many scholars look at those holes and see the work of a mind. Others look at the very same holes and see the teeth of a hyena, which could crush a young bear's soft leg bone and leave punctures that only look like finger holes. The argument goes back and forth. Careful people on both sides, and it is not settled. So I will not tell you the Divje Babe bone is a flute. I will tell you the truth, which is that we do not know, and that good scientists disagree. If it is a flute, then music is far older and stranger than the German caves suggest. And we were not the only kind of human who sang. If it is only a chewed bone, then the honor stays with the vulture bone flute and with our own kind. Either way, the wondering is worth more than a false certainty. So let us gather the 3 mind mysteries we have watched before the story turns. We have seen these people make color for no reason but meaning. We have seen them keep count, catching time in a row of notches. And now we have seen them make music, filling the frozen dark with sound that fed no one and warmed no one and mattered more than almost anything. Make, count, sing. 3 reaches of the mind. All here, all tens of thousands of years before the first city. Together they tell us something that no bone or stone says on its own. That the people of the deep past were not simply surviving, grimly, waiting for civilization to arrive and switch their minds on. Their minds were already fully lit. They made and counted and sang because they were us. But a mind that can sing is also a mind that can grieve. And a band that will spend hours making beauty for each other is a band that will do something else too. Something we have not yet touched. They will care for their own when the body fails. Because here is where the story turns from the mind to the heart. So far we have watched what these people could think and make and imagine. Now we turn to what they could feel for one another. And it begins with the sick. Somewhere in the deep past, a person fell ill or was hurt too badly to gather food or keep up with the band. And instead of being left behind, as a purely wild law would demand, they were tended, fed, given something out of the ground to ease the pain. We can see it. The evidence is there. Caught in the most surprising place of all. And it is where we go next. To the first medicine. Somewhere in the deep past, on an ordinary cold night, a man lay awake with a bad tooth. Not a small ache. A deep, hot, throbbing pain in his jaw. The kind that fills the whole head and will not let a person rest. He had an abscess, an infection under a tooth, and he had a sickness in his belly too, a parasite that would not leave him. He was not old, but he was hurting, badly, and there was no doctor in the world, and would not be one for tens of thousands of years. And yet, he was not left to suffer alone in the dark. Someone was with him, and someone gave him something to take the pain away. We know this, not because anyone wrote it down, but because the man carried the proof of it, without knowing, in his own mouth. And we found it and read it 50,000 years later. To understand how, we have to talk about something you brush away every morning without a thought, the film that builds up on teeth. When it is soft, we call it plaque, but if it is not cleaned off, it hardens over months and years into a tough crust. Dentists call it calculus or tartar. And these people had no toothbrushes, so it built up on their teeth in thick layers and stayed there for the rest of their lives and long after. Here is the wonderful part. That hardened crust traps things. Tiny scraps of whatever passed through the mouth. Bits of the food they ate. Grains of pollen from the air. Fibers of the plants they chewed. All of it, sealed in stone-hard tartar, held safe for 50,000 years, like insects in amber. So when the scientists took the teeth of these ancient people and gently scraped that crust and looked at what was inside, they were reading a menu, a record in the mouth itself, of what a person had actually put between their lips before they died. Now I owe you an honest surprise, and I want to give it to you plainly, because it matters. The clearest early evidence we have of medicine does not come from people exactly like you and me. It comes from our cousins, the Neanderthals. For a long time, the Neanderthals had a bad name. We pictured them as dull, brutish, slow, stupid cavemen. That picture was wrong. It was always wrong. They were another kind of human who lived across Europe and the Near East for a very long time, and who buried their dead and cared for one another, and it turns out, knew things about the plants around them that would surprise a modern doctor. The man with the bad tooth was a Neanderthal. He lived at a place in the north of Spain that the diggers call El Sidron. Say it once and let it go. And when the scientists read the tartar on his teeth, they found something they did not expect. They found traces of two plants, yarrow and chamomile. Now, these are not foods. If you've ever tasted them, you know. They are bitter, sharply, unpleasantly bitter. They fill you up with nothing. No sensible, hungry person eats a mouthful of bitter herb for the nourishment, because there is none. You would spit it out, unless you had a reason, because both of those bitter plants are medicine. People have used them to soothe the gut, to calm inflammation, to ease pain, for as far back as we have records, and clearly, for far longer. And the scientists could even tell that these Neanderthals had the same gene we do for tasting bitterness. So the plants tasted just as sharp and wrong to them as they would to you. Which means the man did not eat them by accident. He tasted the bitterness, the same warning bitterness you would taste, and he swallowed them anyway. On purpose, because he had learned somewhere from someone that a bitter plant makes the pain a little smaller, but the finest detail is still to come, and it is the one that gives me chills every time. Remember the man's troubles, the abscess in his jaw, the parasite in his gut, real pain and real inflammation in two places at once. In his tartar, the scientists found something else, traces of poplar, the bark of the poplar tree, and poplar bark carries a natural chemical, a close cousin of the medicine we now call aspirin. It quiets pain. It calms inflammation. It is, in plain words, a painkiller. Growing on a tree, sit with what that means. This man, in agony from a tooth and a sick belly, was taking the one thing in the forest that treats exactly those symptoms, nature's own aspirin. That is not luck. That is not chewing a random stick. That is a person, or the people caring for him, knowing which tree in the whole cold forest holds the medicine, and going to get it, and giving it to him, 50,000 years ago. Let me set the scene again, gently, in case you are drifting, because this is the heart of it. A man lies in a cave, 50,000 years ago, sick and in pain. He is a Neanderthal, one of our cousins, a kind of human that is gone now, and someone who loves him, or simply will not let him suffer, has gone out into the cold and found the bitter herb and the right bark, and brought them back and pressed them into his hand. Take this, it will help. That is the first medicine. And notice what it is really made of. It is not made of chemistry, though there is chemistry in it. It is made of two things far older and deeper: knowledge, carried in the mind, and passed from person to person across the years, and care, the simple refusal to let someone you know suffer when there is a thing you can do. And that first thing, the knowledge, is worth sitting with because it is bigger than one man and one tree. The man at El Cedron is not alone in the record. As the scientists have scraped the teeth of more and more ancient people, from cave after cave, they have found the traces of many plants. Not just the 2 bitter herbs and the poplar bark. Dozens of different plants. Some for food, some cooked to make them safe, and some, like these, with no use but healing. Think about what that means. It means somebody, across the long generations, had learned which plants were which. Learned that this leaf calms a bad stomach, and that flower cools a fever, and that bark quiets a pain. But this other plant, so similar to look at, will make you sick, or worse. That is a mountain of hard-won knowledge, and every scrap of it was paid for the hard way, by watching and trying, and sometimes by someone getting it wrong. And the medicine was only one corner of it. When the scientists read the tartar on those ancient teeth, they did not only find healing plants, they found the whole diet, and it was far richer than anyone had guessed. Traces of many kinds of plants, seeds, and roots. And here is a detail that quietly overturns the old idea of the brutish caveman gnawing raw meat. Some of those plant traces were cooked, changed by heat, prepared, made softer and safer and easier to eat. These people were not just grabbing whatever they could swallow. They were gathering a wide range of plants and knowing which parts to take and cooking them and combining them. They had, in their heads, something close to a whole cuisine and a whole botany and a whole pharmacy, all at once, all unwritten, all carried in memory and passed down by voice. Set that beside the healing herbs, and a picture comes clear. These were people who understood the green world around them with a depth we can barely imagine. We who buy our food in packages and our medicine in bottles. They had to. Their lives depended on knowing exactly what every plant in their country would do to a human body. Feed it, heal it, or kill it. And they knew. That knowing, that deep, patient life and death intimacy with the living world is one of the oldest kinds of human wisdom there is. And we have very nearly lost it. And none of it was written down. There were no books of remedies. There was no school. The whole pharmacy lived in living memory, in the minds of the older and the wiser, and it was handed down the only way it could be, person to person, an old woman showing a young one which plant to pick, and where it grows, and how much, and when. A voice by a fire, saying, remember this one, it helps, and this one, never touch. A library of healing, carried in nothing but human heads, and kept alive across thousands of years without losing the thread. And I do not want you to imagine that knowledge came easily, because it did not. It was some of the most dangerous knowledge a person could gather, and it was paid for the hardest way there is, because the world of plants does not come labelled. The leaf that soothes a fever and the leaf that stops a heart can grow side by side and look almost the same, and only a person who knows can tell them apart. The line between medicine and poison is often nothing more than which plant and which part and how much. A little of something can heal, a little more of the same thing can kill. And there was no book to check, no expert to call. There was only trying. So somewhere behind every remedy these people trusted, there is a long, quiet history of people who got it wrong. Someone, once, ate the wrong root and learned, too late, that it was deadly, and the ones who watched remembered and warned their children away from it forever. Every safe plant in that unwritten pharmacy was made safe by someone, somewhere back in the dark, finding out the dangerous way. It is a body of knowledge written not in ink, but in hard experience, and some of it in death, which makes the passing of it down feel even more precious. When an old woman told a young one, "This one helps," and this one, "Never touch," she was handing over something her people had paid for in lives. And that gives us one more person to imagine the edge of the firelight. Not the sick man this time, but the one who healed him. Every band, surely, had someone who knew the plants better than the rest. Someone whose memory held the most of that hard-won library, who could look at a fever, or a wound, or a bad belly, and know which leaf to fetch. We do not have their name, or their face, but we can be almost certain they existed, because the knowledge existed, and knowledge lives in people. Somewhere in the deep past stands the first healer, the first person others came to when the body failed, the distant ancestor of every doctor, every nurse, every wise grandmother with a remedy, every hand that has ever been laid on a fevered brow, not with a diploma, not with a laboratory, just with a lifetime of watching and remembering and caring enough to learn. The oldest profession of kindness there is, older than farming, older than the written word, standing quietly at the mouth of a cave, deciding which plant will help. Because there is a quiet thing buried under this whole story, and I do not want you to miss it. A man that sick could not have gathered his own food. He could not have kept up with a band on the move. In a purely wild world, a world of nothing but survival, he would have been left behind. That is the cold law of the wilderness. The weak are lost. But he was not lost. He was fed. He was tended. He was given medicine, which means these people had already broken, long ago, the cold law of the wild. They had decided, without any book telling them to, that a sick person is still one of us, still worth feeding, still worth walking into the forest for, still worth keeping. Many scholars believe this is one of the oldest and most human things we can find in the record. Older than farming, older than cities. The choice to care for someone who can give you nothing back, simply because they are yours. And there is a kind of strength in that choice that we do not always give it credit for. We tend to think a band survived by being tough, by the fastest runner and the strongest arm. And those mattered, of course. But a band also survived by holding together, by no one being thrown away, by every person knowing that if they fell ill or grew old or were hurt, the others would not abandon them. That knowledge is its own kind of armor. It let people take risks for one another and trust one another and stay bound as one through the hardest seasons. A group where the sick are cared for is a group whose members will give everything for each other, because each of them knows the care will come back around when their own turn comes. The kindness was not the opposite of survival. It was one of the deepest tools of it. These people did not care for their sick in spite of the hard world. In a real sense, they survived the hard world because they cared for their sick. So let us hold the first medicine and see it for what it is. Somewhere out there, a person felt another person's pain as something worth fixing. They held in their mind a map of the healing things in the world, the bitter flower and the quiet bark. And they spent their own time and effort asking nothing to make a suffering person hurt a little less every hospital, every kind nurse, every parent up at night with a feverish child and a cool cloth, every remedy your grandmother swore by, all of it grows from this same root: a person in pain, and another person who would not stand for it. And underneath even that, there's a quieter idea, and it may be the most important one in this whole chapter. To treat a sickness, you must first believe that the sickness is worth treating, that the suffering of this one person, this ordinary person who may never hunt again or carry a load again, matters enough to spend real effort on, that a life is worth saving simply because it is a life. That sounds obvious to you and me because we were raised inside it, but it is not obvious at all. It is a choice, and a deep one. And there was a time before anyone had made it. Somewhere in the long dark, our kind and our cousins too crossed a line that no animal has ever crossed. They decided that a person in pain is a problem to be solved, not a weakness to be discarded. That the right response to suffering is to reach toward it, not away from it. Every medicine that has ever been made, every cure, every comfort, rests on that one ancient decision. And we can see it now, caught in the tartar of a sick man's teeth, 50,000 years old. The moment our ancestors decided that it is good to ease another's pain, everything we call care was already growing from that. And here is the thing that ties this chapter to the last. We saw that these people could sing, could make beauty for no reason but feeling. And now we see that they could heal, could ease a pain that was not their own. The singing and the healing come from the same place, from a heart that reaches outward, past its own skin, towards someone else. But medicine can only do so much. A bitter herb can soothe a fever. It cannot mend a shattered arm, or give sight back to a blind eye, or make a broken leg carry weight again. And yet, in the deep past, we find people who lived for years with injuries exactly that bad, blind, crippled, broken in ways that no herb could touch. People who, by every hard rule of the wild, should have died within days. They did not die. They lived on, for years, sometimes for decades. And there is only one way that was possible. Someone carried them. That is where we go next. To the man who could not survive alone, and did anyway, because his people would not let him fall. There was an old man who should have been dead for 30 years. He sat by the fire, in a great cave, wrapped against the cold, and the people around him were his people. He was old, truly old, for his kind and his time. His face was scarred down one side. One of his eyes did not work. One of his arms ended below the elbow, and what was left of it was thin and withered and useless. He walked with a heavy limp, dragging a ruined leg, and he could not hear. The world came to him silent. Any one of those things, in the world he lived in, should have killed him quickly. Together, they should have killed him almost at once. A man who cannot hear the lion in the grass, who cannot run, who cannot use one arm, who cannot see from one side, is not a man the wild lets live. The wild is patient, and it is merciless, and it takes the broken first. And yet, here he was, old, by the fire, among his people. He had lived, broken, for decades. Tonight we are going to ask how. And the answer is the most tender thing in this whole long story. To meet him, we have to go to a real place. High in the mountains of northern Iraq, there is a cave there, an enormous one, that people have sheltered in for tens of thousands of years. The diggers call it Shanidar. Say it once and let it go. In the year 1957, an archaeologist named Ralph Solecki was digging deep in the floor of that cave. And down in the old layers, going back some 50,000 years, he and his team began to find the bones of people. Not people exactly like us. Neanderthals, our cousins, the other kind of human, the ones we met in the last 2 chapters, who tended the sick and knew the healing plants. They found several of them buried in that cave over the years. But one man in particular stopped everyone. The diggers grew so fond of him that they gave him a name. They called him Nandi. And when they laid out his bones and began to read them, they realized they were looking at a life that should not have been possible. I want to slow down on how they read a life from bones, because it is a quiet kind of magic, and it is the reason we can trust any of this. A bone is not a dead, blank thing. While a person lives, their bones are alive. They grow, they respond, they carry a record of what happened to the body. When a bone breaks, it does not simply snap and stay snapped. If the person lives, the body rushes to mend it. New bone grows across the break, rough at first, then smoothed over the months, until the crack is sealed with a thickened knot of healed bone that lasts forever. So when a scientist holds an ancient bone, they can tell the difference between a wound that killed a person and a wound they survived. A killing wound has sharp, raw, unhealed edges. A survived wound is rounded, mended, grown over. It is the difference between a cut and a scar. And on the bones of Nandi, almost every terrible injury was a scar, mended, grown over, survived, which meant that after each disaster that should have ended him, his body had been given months and years of living to heal. And a body cannot give itself that time. Only other people can. The man who found him, Ralph Solecki, spent years in that cave, working down through the layers with brushes and small tools, the way all careful diggers do, taking away time a few grains at a time. And what he slowly uncovered changed how the whole world thought about the Neanderthals. Because Shanidar was not a place where one unlucky body happened to lie. It was a place these people came back to, again and again, across the generations, to lay their dead in the ground. Solecki found the remains of around 10 of them there, of different ages, from small children to worn old adults. A cave used, over a very long time, as somewhere the dead belonged. Hold that thought. It is going to matter greatly in our last chapter. For now, keep your eyes on the old broken man, because his body has more to tell us than any of the others. Let me read you his injuries, the way the scientists read them from his bones. Slowly, one at a time, because each one is a wound, and each one is also, strangely, a miracle. Start with his face. At some point, long before he died, he took a heavy blow to the side of his head. A crushing impact, hard enough to leave its mark forever in the bone around his eye. That blow very likely blinded him in one eye. From that day, he saw the world with half its depth, half its warning, a whole side gone dark. Now his arm, that same kind of damage to that side of his body, seems to have withered his right arm. It hung thin and weak and all but lifeless, and at some point the lower part of it, below the elbow, was gone entirely. Whether it was lost in the injury or removed after, we cannot say for certain. But he lived much of his life with one working arm, one that could do nothing at all. Then his leg, on the same ruined side. Crippled. He would have dragged it. There was even a small bone in his foot that was broken and healed, which would only have deepened his limp. Every step this man took was work, and pain, and slowness. And then, perhaps the cruelest of all, and the one the scientists only worked out more recently, in the canals of his ears, bone had grown where it should not, in a way that would have left him profoundly deaf. Very likely, he heard almost nothing at all. Stop and put yourself in his world for a moment, gently, because it is a hard place to stand. You are in a land of real predators, big cats, bears, wolves. They hunt at the edges of the firelight, in the dark, in the long grass. Every other person in your band survives partly by hearing them coming, the snap of a twig, the low sound in the throat, the shift in the wind. He heard none of it. He lived in silence, in a world that was trying to eat him, with one eye, one arm, and one good leg. He could not run. He could not fight. He could not hear death approach. By every hard law of the wild, this man was prey. He should have been taken, alone and unaware, within days of the first injury. He lived for years, perhaps for decades. He grew old. There is only one way that is possible, and it is not a herb, or a clever tool, or good luck. It is other people. It is his band, choosing every single day to keep him alive. Think about what that choice actually cost them, day after day, for years. When the band moved, and bands must move, to follow the food and the seasons, he could not keep up. So someone slowed down for him. Someone walked at his broken pace. Perhaps someone carried him, or half carried him, over the hard ground, across the rivers, up the passes. A group that must move fast to eat chose again and again to move at the speed of its slowest, most broken member. When there was food, he could not gather his own. He had one arm and could not run down an animal, or dig for long, or climb. So someone gave him a share. Someone took food out of their own hands, food they had worked for, and put it in his, knowing he could never repay it, would never bring in a kill, would never carry a heavy load. And at night, when the predators came testing the dark, he could not hear them. So someone listened for him. Someone kept part of their attention, always, on the safety of a man who could not keep himself safe, for years. Let me take you into just one ordinary day of that care, so it does not stay a vague and gentle idea, but becomes a real thing that real hands did. Say it is autumn, and the band must cross to the winter valley before the snow closes the high passes. This is not a stroll. It is a hard march over broken ground, with children to mind and food to carry, and cold coming behind them. A fit person finds it tiring. For the old man, it is nearly impossible. His leg will not carry him far. His arm cannot steady him on the rocks. His eye misjudges the drop. His ears give him no warning of the loose stone underfoot. So on that day, someone walks beside him the whole way, a shoulder under his good arm on the steep parts, a hand on his back at the river crossing, where the cold water pulls at his ruined leg, and he cannot feel the current the way he should. When the band stops to rest and eat, someone brings him his share, because he cannot forage on the move. And when they camp at last, in the dark, he lies down among them, in the middle, in the safest place, where the listening ears of the others surround him like a wall. That is one day. Now multiply it by every hard march, every river, every winter, every night, for years and years. That is what the healed bones actually mean. Not a single kind gesture, but thousands of them. A patient tide of small daily choices from people whose own lives were already hard enough to keep one broken man among the living. And notice who paid for it. Not a king with servants to spare. Not a rich society, with food to waste. A small band of hunters and gatherers, living close to the bone, where every mouth mattered and every hand was needed. They had less than almost anyone who has ever lived, and still they carried him. The care did not come out of surplus. It came out of scarcity, which makes it mean more, not less. None of this is written anywhere, but it is written in his bones, because his injuries healed. The bone grew back, smoothed over, mended. And bone only heals on a living body, over months and years. Every healed wound on this man is a receipt. It is proof that after the injury that should have ended him, he went on living and eating and being kept warm and safe, long enough for the bone to knit. Each healed break is a record of someone's care, made permanent in his skeleton. Now I want to be careful and honest, the way I have been all night, because this is exactly the kind of story a careless teller would sweeten past the truth. We do not know his name. We do not know if he was loved or merely tolerated, or honored for some role we cannot see. We do not know the feelings around that fire. Some scholars, cautious ones, will remind us that keeping a disabled elder alive is not proof of tenderness, only of a group that could afford it or chose it for reasons of their own. That is fair. I cannot show you the love. I can only show you the bones. But here is what the bones do prove, beyond any argument. Whatever the feeling behind it, these people did it. For years, a band of the other kind of human fed, guarded, and carried a man who could give them nothing back. They broke the oldest law of the wild, the law that says the weak are left behind, and they broke it not once, in a moment of pity, but every day, for a very long time. That is not an accident. That is a way of living. That is a people who had decided long before us that a person is not worth only what they can carry. And I will say the gentle thing plainly, because I believe it is true. It is very hard to keep a helpless person alive for decades out of cold calculation alone. Cold calculation gives up. Cold calculation leaves the broken by the river when the winter comes. Something warmer than calculation kept this man by the fire until he was old. Many scholars believe, and I believe, that the simplest word for that, something, is the right one. They cared for him. But let me also offer you a second thought, a quieter one, that sits alongside the love without replacing it. Because it may be that the old man was not only a person to be pitied, it may be that he was, in the truest sense, precious. Remember, these people had no books, no records, no way to store what they knew outside of living minds. And an old man, even a broken one, even one who could not hunt or carry or hear, held inside his head something no young, strong hunter could match. Decades of memory. He had lived through droughts the young ones had never seen, and could say where the water still ran when the rivers failed. He had watched the herds for 40 years, and knew their patterns better than anyone. He knew the plants, the healing ones, and the deadly ones. He knew the old stories that told the band who they were. In a world without writing, the old were the libraries. They were the deepest well of knowledge the group possessed. And the day one of them died, a whole library burned. So when the band fed the old man, and guarded him, and carried him across the rivers, they may not have been only being kind, though they were. They may also have been keeping safe the wisest mind among them. His body had failed, but his memory had not, and his memory might save them all in the next hard winter. There is a deep and beautiful lesson folded into that. In their world, a person did not stop being valuable when they stopped being strong. The body was not the measure of the person, and a society that understands that a life holds worth long after the muscles fail, understands something that our own world, with all its books and machines, still struggles to remember. Let us sit with the old man a while longer, because his life is trying to tell us something about all of us. For most of the time, I have been alive, and for most of the time before that, we told a story about ourselves that went like this. Nature is cruel. Survival is a fight. The strong win, the weak die, and human kindness is a thin, late coat of paint over an animal that is really, underneath, only out for itself. This man's bones tell a different story, and they tell it from 50,000 years ago, from a kind of human that is not even us. They say that caring for the weak is not a late invention. It is not a soft luxury that came with cities and churches and comfort. It is old, older than our species standing alone, older than farming, older than the wheel, older than the first written word by an amount of time that makes those things look recent. The care came first. Before we built anything, before we wrote anything, we were already the creature that carries its broken, that sat up in the dark to listen for the predators a deaf friend could not hear, that walked slow for years so that no one would be left behind. And when at last the old man died, old and broken and kept, his people did not leave him where he fell or carry him out for the animals. They buried him there, in the floor of the great cave that had sheltered him all his life, among the others of his kind who had been laid to rest in that same ground. They dug into the earth, and they placed his worn and mended body into it, with what looks, to the diggers who found him, like real care. Which brings us, at last, to the final mystery of the night, because burying the dead is its own strange and beautiful thing. No animal does it. It feeds no one. It protects no one. It is pure meaning, pure feeling, aimed at a person who is already gone. And it is one of the very oldest and most human things we have ever found in the ground. We have watched these people make and count and sing. We have watched them heal the sick and carry the broken. There is one reach of the heart left, the deepest one of all. What they did when someone they loved was gone for good. That is where we go last, to the first grave. 100,000 years ago, in a cave above a green valley, a group of people were burying a child. The child was young, 12 years old, perhaps 13, old enough to have laughed and run and been loved by everyone in the small band, young enough that no one was ready. We do not know how the child died. Children died easily then, of things we now cure in an afternoon. What we know is what the people did next, and it is the reason we are here, at the very end of our long night, in this quiet cave. They did not leave the body where it lay. They did not carry it out for the animals, the way every other creature on earth deals with its dead. They did something else, something that had never needed doing before life became what these people had made of it. They made a grave. Let us stay with what that act really is, because it is the strangest and most beautiful thing in this whole story, and it deserves the last and quietest hour of our night. A grave does nothing. Think about it honestly. It does not feed the living. It does not shelter them or warm them or keep them safe. It takes time and effort and care, and it spends all of that on a person who is already gone, who will never know, who can never say thank you. By every cold measure of survival, burying the dead is a waste. No animal does it. A wolf does not bury its pack. A deer does not mourn. And yet, here are these people, 100,000 years ago, digging into the hard floor of a cave to lay a child gently in the ground. Which means that somewhere in the deep past, a mind looked at death, at the still body of someone it loved, and could not simply walk away, could not treat that body as meat, or as nothing, felt that the person was still, somehow, a person, still owed something, still theirs. That feeling, whatever we call it, is the deepest thing we will find tonight. And it is where the whole story has quietly been heading from the very first fire. The cave is a real one. It sits in the hills near the town of Nazareth, in what is now Israel, looking out over a wide green valley. The diggers call it Kafsa. Say it once and let it go. And now, at last, a change worth marking. All night, in these last chapters, our best evidence of the tender things, the medicine, the care, has come from our cousins, the Neanderthals. But this cave is different. The people buried at Kafsa were not Neanderthals. They were us. Anatomically modern humans, people whose skulls and hands and bodies are the same as yours. This is our own family, 100,000 years back, doing the thing we still do. The diggers found at least 15 of them laid in that ground, over a long stretch of time. 15 people, buried with care in the same cave, which tells us this was not a single strange event, but a custom, a place where the dead belonged, held across the generations. But one of those 15, more than any other, reaches across the 100,000 years and takes you by the throat. The child. Before we go to the child, let me answer the question a careful person is right to ask. How do we know these people were buried on purpose? Bodies end up under the ground all the time, by accident. A cave roof falls. A flood buries a body in mud. How can anyone say, 100,000 years later, that this was a funeral, and not just an accident of the earth? It is a fair question, and the answer is why these particular graves are so trusted. A body that is buried by accident lands however it falls, sprawled, twisted, at whatever angle the collapse left it. But these bodies were arranged, laid out deliberately, in a chosen pose, curled and resting. An accident does not fold a child's arms. An accident does not dig a neat recess in the rock to hold a body. And above all, an accident does not lay a pair of antlers across a chest, or pour red ochre into the grave. Grave goods and pigment are the fingerprints of intention. They are things that could only have been placed by grieving hands. When you find a body arranged with care, in a dug hollow, with a gift in its arms, and the earth stained red around it, you are not looking at an accident. You are looking at a ceremony. That is how we know. Here is how they laid the child to rest. And I'm going to tell it to you slowly, exactly as the earth preserved it, because every detail was a choice. And every choice was made by a grieving hand. They did not just scrape a hole. They laid the child in a recess in the rock, a sheltered place, chosen. They arranged the small body with care, curled gently, the way a sleeping person lies, or the way we all lay once, before we were born. This was not a body dumped. It was a person put to bed. And then they did two things that stopped the breath. First, the antlers. Someone had taken a large branching antlers of a fallow deer, cut carefully from the animal's skull, and they laid those antlers across the child, across the chest, and into the hands, placed there, held there, so that the child's arms seemed to cradle them. We do not know for certain what the antlers meant. We never will. Maybe they were a gift for a journey. Maybe a mark of who the child was, or hoped to be. Maybe a beautiful thing, given because the child had loved it, or because the grievers could not bear to send the child into the dark with empty hands. But you do not need to know the exact meaning to feel the shape of it. Someone placed a treasure into the arms of a dead child, so that the child would not be alone and would not be empty in the ground. That is a gesture you understand in your own body across 100,000 years without anyone having to explain it. And then, the second thing, the color. The earth around the child and around the antlers was soaked in red ochre, the same soft iron-rich stone we watched a pair of hands grind into powder at the very beginning of this night, 100,000 years ago, in a cave on the far side of the world. The first color, the paint that had no use but meaning. That red, here, at the end, it comes back. The grievers brought ochre to this grave, ochre that had to be found and carried and ground, and they poured its red into the earth, over the body, into the recess, until the whole grave was stained the color of blood, and of fire, and of the low sun, and of life itself. They painted their dead child red. I told you, near the start, to remember the color. Here is why. The red thread we have followed all night, through the paint kit sealed in a shell, through the marks cut into stone, through the beads worn until they shone, runs all the way here, and ends in the grave of a child. The first color and the last are the same color. And what it meant, underneath everything, was this: you matter. You are not nothing, even gone, even silent, even in the ground. You are ours, and we mark you with the color of being alive. The child is not alone in telling us this. In another cave, on the slopes of a mountain by the sea not far away, a place the diggers call Skul, they found more of our people, laid in the ground with the same tenderness. One of them was a grown man, and he had been buried holding something, the jawbone of a wild boar, a great tusked animal, placed against his body, cradled in his arm, the way the child cradled the antlers. Another gift for another journey. One of the oldest offerings to the dead that we've ever found. 2 graves, 2 gifts. A child with the antlers of a deer, a man with the jaw of a boar. Different people, different lives. The same unmistakable act. The refusal to send someone you love into death with nothing. The need to give, one last time, to a person who can no longer take. And here I owe you one more honest thread, because it reaches back to the old man we met in the last chapter. Remember Shanidar, the great cave in the mountains of Iraq, where the broken man was carried for decades and then laid to rest among his kind. That cave holds one of the most famous and most argued over graves in all of archaeology. Around one of the Neanderthals buried there, the diggers found unusual amounts of flower pollen in the soil. For years, people told a beautiful story about it. The flower burial, they called it. A Neanderthal laid to rest on a bed of wildflowers by mourners who gathered blooms for their dead. I would love to tell you it is certainly true, but honesty is the whole point of this night. So I will tell you instead that it is contested, warmly. Some scholars still believe the flowers were placed by human hands. Others think the pollen was carried in by burrowing animals, or by the wind over the long years, and that we saw a funeral where there was only chance. We do not know, so I will not promise you the flowers. But I will tell you that the argument itself is a kind of wonder, because it means that even for our cousins, even that far back, a bed of flowers for the dead is not an impossible thought. The people arguing on both sides agree it could have happened. That alone tells you how deep this tenderness runs. There's one more honest question hanging over all of it, and I will not hide it from you. We do not know whether the care for the dead was invented once by one people and carried out into the world, or whether it welled up again and again in different caves, among different kinds of humans, wherever people came to love one another enough to grieve. Both are possible. Perhaps it does not matter which, whether it was passed hand to hand like the black glass, or bloomed on its own in a dozen places like a flower that grows wherever the ground is right. The meaning is the same. By this point in the deep past, to be human, of any kind, was to bury your dead with care. Now let me be careful and honest. One last time, because we are standing on the most sacred ground in the whole story, and I will not cheapen it with false certainty. We cannot hear their words over that grave. We do not know if they believed in another world, in a journey, in a place the dead go. We do not know if the antlers were a prayer, or a memory, or simply love with nowhere else to put itself. Some careful scholars will remind us that we are reading feelings into stone and bone, and that we should be humble about it. That is fair, and I have tried to be humble all night. But some things the grave says plainly, past all argument. These people chose a place. They dug. They arranged the body with care, in a resting pose, not a discarded one. They brought gifts and laid them in loving hands. They carried red ochre to the graveside and coloured the earth with it. None of that feeds anyone. None of that keeps anyone alive. Every bit of it was effort spent freely on someone already beyond help. And you do not do that for a thing you think is nothing. You do that for someone you loved and lost and could not let go of without a ceremony. So I will say the human thing plainly, because I believe the grave earns it. They grieved. 100,000 years ago, in a cave near Nazareth, people stood around the small body of a child and felt exactly what you would feel. The unbearable weight of it. The need to do something, anything, to make it mean more than an empty ending. And out of that need, they made the oldest tenderness we have ever dug out of the earth. And think of what that death meant. In a band so small, these were not the great crowds of a city, where a stranger dies and the world rolls on unchanged. This was a handful of people, a few dozen at most, who knew each other completely, who had shared every fire and every meal and every hard winter. In a group that small, every single person is woven into every other. A child is not one of thousands. A child is one of the few. The whole band had watched this child take its first steps, had heard its laugh across the camp, had counted on it to grow into one of the hunters and mothers who would carry them all forward. A child was the future of the band, made small and warm and walking around. So when a child died, it was not a private grief for the parents alone. It tore a hole in the whole small world. Everyone had lost. Everyone stood at that grave. And perhaps that is part of why they gave so much to the burial, the recess, the antlers, the red earth. Because the grief was that large and that shared, and it needed somewhere to go. A ceremony is what people build when a feeling is too big to carry alone. They built one 100,000 years ago around a child. Then we found the shape of it still there in the ground, the oldest proof that a broken heart is not a modern thing. Sit with the child a while before we begin to say goodnight. For 100,000 years after that burial, and for 50,000 before it, people lived and loved and lost and grieved in almost complete silence, leaving almost nothing behind. Billions of lives and billions of small deaths, and around so many of them, we can be sure now, the same red grief, the same standing around a grave, the same refusal to let a loved one go into the dark as nothing. We tend to think grief is the price of our big modern hearts, our poetry and our religions and our long memories. It is not. It is old, unimaginably old, older than all of those. Before the first city, before the first field, before the first written word, our kind already wept over its dead and buried them in a resting pose and gave them gifts and coloured their graves with the red of life. The love that makes death hurt was already here, fully formed 100,000 years ago, in the hands that laid a pair of antlers into a child's arms. And that, in the end, is what the missing years were full of. Not emptiness, not brutes waiting to become human. People who made and counted and sang and healed and carried their broken and wept over their dead and painted their grief the colour of the sun. We began this night with a pair of hands grinding red stone into powder by a fire, making the first colour, for no reason but meaning. We have followed that red through everything, and now we have arrived at the place it was always going. Not a wall, not a bead, not a mark on a bone. A grave, a child, arms full of antlers, earth full of red. The first colour and the last are the same, and the meaning was always the same too. It was love, looking for something to do with itself. It found paint and beads and music and medicine, and a shoulder under a broken friend's arm. And at the very last, it found a grave and a handful of red earth and a way to say goodbye. There is only a little left to say now. A gentle word to carry you the rest of the way into sleep about what became of all these people and of the red and of the 150,000 years. And so we come to the close. And so we come to the end of the long night, and to the quietest part of it. The fires have burned low now, in all the caves we have visited, on the cold coast of Africa, where a pair of hands ground the first red paint, in the green valley, where the black glass travelled 100 miles from hand to friendly hand, on the stony hill, where someone cut 29 notches into a bone, and watched the moon, in the frozen north, where a vulture's wingbone became a flute, in the caves of the sick and the carried and the buried. All of those fires have burned down to embers now, and the people around them are sleeping, the way you are nearly sleeping. And that is exactly as it should be. Let us not wake them. Let us just sit for a little while in the warm dark and gather up the whole story softly before we let it go. We came looking for the missing years, the 150,000 years and more that our kind lived before the first city, the first field, the first written word, the long stretch that history class skips over in a sentence, as if nothing happened there, as if the real story only started when someone finally built a wall and wrote it down. And what did we find in all that supposed emptiness? Not emptiness at all. We found people exactly like us, in every way that matters. People who made color for the joy and meaning of it. People who carried treasures across 100 miles of danger, not to take, but to give, and so turned strangers into kin. People who caught time itself in a row of notches. People who filled the frozen dark with music that fed no one, and warmed no one, and mattered more than almost anything. People who knew which bitter plant would ease a fever, and which tree held the medicine for pain. People who fed and guarded and carried a broken friend for decades, at real cost, asking nothing back. And people who, when someone they loved was gone, could not simply walk away, but dug a grave and laid the body down to rest, and filled its arms with gifts, and coloured the earth red with grief. That is what the missing years were made of. Not nothing, everything, just without the walls and the writing to hold onto it. Here is the thought I most want to leave with you as you drift. We tend to imagine those ancient people as far away, as dim and simple and less than us, as a rough early draft of humanity, waiting in the dark for civilization to arrive and switch their minds on. Everything we found tonight says that picture is wrong. Their minds were already fully lit. They were not becoming human. They already were, completely, in the body and the heart, tens of thousands of years before anyone thought to write a word. Which means they're not far away at all. They are close. Closer than almost anyone in a history book. When you decorate a room, or wear the colour that feels like you are doing what the hands at Blombos did. When you give a gift to keep a friendship warm, you are doing what the people of the grasslands did with their beads and their black glass. When you hum a tune for no reason, or play music in a hard season, you are doing what the flute maker did in the frozen cave. When you sit up with someone who is sick, or slow your pace for someone who cannot keep up, or stand at a grave unable to leave, you are doing exactly, precisely what these people did 100,000 years ago. The distance between you and them is only time, in every way that counts. They are you, and you are them. And the red thread. Let us follow it one last time, all the way to where you are lying right now. It began as paint, ground in a shell for the pure meaning of it. It rode the trade networks and marked the beads and cut its patterns into stone. And at the end, it lined a child's grave, the colour of life laid down over the fact of death. That red did not stop at the grave. It ran on. It ran through every people who ever painted, and mourned, and loved. It runs through you. The same iron that reddens the ochre reddens your own blood right now, warm under your skin as you fall asleep. You are carrying the colour out of the deep past in your own body tonight. The 150,000 years did not end. They were never a separate, lost country. They became us. Every ordinary Tuesday in that long stretch, every meal found, every child taught, every story told by every fire, all of it flowed forward, generation into generation, hand into hand, until it arrived here, as you. You are the far end of that unbroken thread. You are what the missing years were quietly building all along. Let us walk back through it one last time, slowly, the way you might trail your hand along a wall in the dark on the way to bed. You do not need to hold on to any of it. Just let it pass. There was a Tuesday on a coast 100,000 years ago. An old woman woke first and fed the fire. The tide went out, and the children gathered mussels on the rocks, and a girl laughed at a boy who could not catch a limpet. A man sat in the good light and struck beautiful blades from stone, and a boy beside him tried, and failed, and was not scolded. At night they made their beds of clean grass over ash, the way people had already been doing for longer than we can hold in the mind. And they slept. There was a shell at the back of a cave, with a crust of dried red, and hands that picked it up and made paint. For no reason but meaning. There was black glass that travelled 100 miles from one friendly hand to the next, and little shells carried inland to people who never saw the sea. All of it gifts, all of it turning strangers into kin against the hard days everyone knew were coming. There was a bone with 29 notches, cut by firelight under the moon, the first time anyone caught a number and held it. There was a flute made from a vulture's wing, filling a frozen cave with music that fed no one. There was a sick man given the bitter herb and the healing bark. There was a broken old man carried by his people for years, across the rivers and the winters, because they would not let him fall. And there was a child, laid in the earth with antlers in its arms, and red ochre poured into the grave, so that even in death it would not be alone, and would not be nothing. Make, give, count, sing, heal, carry, remember. 7 quiet reaches of the human heart, all of them here, all of them ours, all of them tens of thousands of years before the first city. That is the whole story. That is what was waiting for us in the missing years. So let the fire burn all the way down now. There is nothing left to keep watch for. The people are sleeping in their cave 100,000 years ago, safe in the middle of the band, warm on their beds of grass over ash, exactly as people have slept for longer than there have been words for sleep. And you are sleeping too, or nearly, wherever you are, on your own soft bed that someone, somewhere down the long line, first thought to make. You are one of them, the newest one, held up by every hand that came before, all the way back to the fire on the cold African coast. Think of it softly as you drift. Behind you, holding you up, is an unbroken line of people, stretching back further than you can imagine. Your parents, and theirs, back and back, one behind the other, thousands of generations of them, all the way to that first cave. Not one of them was missed. Every single one lived long enough and was cared for enough to pass life on to the next. The whole long chain held. Through ice ages, through hungers, through hard winters and long droughts, not one link broke, or you would not be here. You are the living end of the longest, luckiest, most patient act of love there has ever been. Countless hands, across 150,000 years and more, each one keeping the small flame of a life alight just long enough to hand it on. And now it rests, warm and safe, with you. You do not have to do anything with that tonight. You do not have to hold on to it or remember it in the morning. Just let it be true underneath you, like the ground, like the bed. You are held. You always were. All the way down. And if you are still a little awake, let me leave you with the gentlest thought I have. All those people, across all those years, wanted the same few simple things you want. To be warm, to be fed, to be near the ones they loved, to make something a little beautiful, to not be alone in the dark. That is all. That is the whole of it, under the 150,000 years. The same small wishes, glowing in the same kind of heart, by the same kind of fire, night after night after night, all the way back to the beginning, and all the way forward to you, lying here now. Nothing about that has to be solved. There is no lesson to take, no work to do. The people in the caves are sleeping. The old woman has banked her fire. The child is at rest, with the red earth around it and the antlers in its arms. And it is not afraid, and it is not alone. And you are here, at the safe, far end of it all, warm and held and allowed, finally, to rest. If you drifted off somewhere in the middle of all this, that is exactly as it should be. The story will keep. It has kept for 100,000 years. It'll still be here. Rest now. You come from people who made beauty in the cold and carried each other through the dark and would not let go of the ones they loved, even at the very end. That is a good and gentle thing to be made of. Sleep well, and sleep on it tonight.